In May of 2013, you testified to the Economy Scrutiny Committee of Manchester City Council, and they asked you, Kate Chappell, who's now the Environment Exec, has taken over from Nigel Murphy, asked you very specifically, great, understand what should we do in Manchester, and earlier in this interview you talked about demand reduction as a way of giving ourselves some time. So what sorts of things do you think should be happening in Manchester, both the City Council but also business, campaigning groups, around demand reduction in the next 18 months, 2, 3, 4 years?
Okay. Well, I think a large part of this is a distributional issue. That most of the energy consumption will be the responsibility of a relatively small group of people. And we generally know who they are. I mean, to be blunt about this, if you've got a reasonable income, then your emissions will quite closely align to that. Now, there'll be some exceptions, but by and large, that's how it holds. So if we seriously want to bring emissions down in the short term, it's reducing the energy demand for those of us who consume most energy, or much more of a high proportion of that energy. And indeed, for some of the poorer people in Manchester, we'd rather like to see the energy consumption going up, because that means they will probably have warmer, drier, more healthy homes that they were living in. So I think that distributional part is very important to bear in mind there. So then you start to come to the people who are emitting quite a lot. And I look at myself and my colleagues, people like me, and where do our emissions start to come from? It's how we live in our homes, certainly our travel, but also from a climate point of view, it's what we consume as well. So the goods that we consume. And it's those three domains I think we really have to seriously tackle. Now, how the council can try to drive that forward, I'm sure they have lots of tools and so forth at their disposal, and I wouldn't like to say what's best for them to do. But certainly, firstly they're involved. The obvious one, the difficult one, and the elephant in the room, they're involved with the airport. Now, the airport will no doubt facilitate some people who are on lower incomes flying to Benidorm, and we'll all complain about them saying it's their fault. But actually we know that most of the people, or the increase in the amount of people that are flying, are people like myself. It's the relatively wealthy people who are already flying a lot who are flying more. So we need to be changing our behaviours, what we do, where we go to, and try to either go by slower forms of transport, or indeed maybe just go to places that are much nearer. But that's both for work and for business, try and find alternative business routes that don't require us to continually spend our time on planes. But then also in the types of properties that we live in. I mean, why do we have to live in such large properties? And if we do live in them, can we not try and live in them more efficiently? Most of the properties that are here today were built many years ago and actually had people living in them, living good quality lives, only a few years ago really, that were relatively low carbon. So it's not as if this is we're looking for some sort of radical technical solution to this. We lived good quality lives in the existing housing stock with much lower carbon emissions. What was it we were doing then that allowed us to do these sorts of things? And then when we are using the sort of technologies and the consumption side of things, what do we consume? Try and buy the things that are much more efficient. So we need to put the wherewithal in place to encourage us as a community, whether it's the businesses or whether it's individuals or whether it's things that the council can get engaged with directly, to for people like me to make those sorts of changes to our lives very rapidly indeed. And I don't think this isn't insurmountable. There are many things the council can do. They can catalyse a lot of things. I would have thought it's procurement. Again, like our university, the procurement process could be one that really does drive that forward. And you might try to do as much local procurement as possible, but you might say we will procure locally, but you have to meet some very stringent standards, and we're prepared to pay the supplement if that's considered to be appropriate. So I think that the council can help drive that forward. But also, it's a city with three main universities. And other universities that are on the periphery of Manchester as well, Manchester and Salford. So we have those universities here. Those universities should be leading by example. Now there are some good examples and there's some very bad examples coming from the universities. So we should be driving that forward. So if we have the universities doing that, and they feed into the private sector, into the knowledge economy and into civil society, and we have the council, I think that already starts to catalyse greater action. And then on top of this, we already have some businesses that are based in the northwest that are showing some early and some good signs of more sustainable, or let's call them less unsustainable practices. And we need to be trying to foster those and drive them forward. So through some sort of collective action of these, but people have to step up and catalyse these things. Step up to the plate and prepare to put their neck on the line to some extent on the block to try and drive these things forward. But I think there's already some inertia there for change. But we mustn't let rest on the laurels. What we need to do is something way beyond anything we've yet been prepared to countenance.
Yeah. You're making me depressed, Kevin.
This is my upbeat version of what we can do.
Oh, crikey.